The stone corridor was silent except for the echo of boots on marble. It was midnight at Windsor Castle, and Daniel Wright was halfway through another night shift. He had been a royal guard for 11 years. 11 years of standing still, watching doors, and keeping secrets. But nothing had ever prepared him for what he was about to find. Daniel paused near the East Wing library. Something felt wrong. The air was colder here. A draft was coming from somewhere it shouldn't. He turned his flashlight toward the old wooden panels lining the wall. One of them looked different. Darker. Like it had been moved. Recently, his heart began to beat faster. He pressed his gloved hand against the panel. It shifted. Behind it was a gap in the wall, barely wide enough for a hand. And inside that gap was an envelope. Old, yellow with age. Sealed with red wax that bore a symbol he recognized instantly, the royal crest. Daniel's mouth went dry. He pulled the envelope out carefully. It was addressed in elegant handwriting. No name. Just 2 words, for protection. He knew he should report it. Protocol said anything unusual had to go straight to the head of security. But curiosity pulled at him like a whisper. He broke the seal. Inside was a letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. He had seen it on official documents 100 times. It was Queen Elizabeth's. The letter was dated September 1997, just days after Princess Diana's death. If you've ever wondered what really goes on behind palace walls, subscribe now because this story will change everything you thought you knew about the royal family. Daniel read the first line, and his blood turned to ice. If you are reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. The letter went on. It spoke of danger, of people inside the palace who could not be trusted, of secrets that were buried too deep, and it named names. High-ranking officials, advisors, people still alive, still powerful. Daniel's hands trembled. This was not just a letter. This was a weapon. He folded it quickly and stuffed it into his jacket. His mind raced. What was he supposed to do? Turn it in and hope for the best? Or keep quiet and pretend he never saw it? He started walking back toward his post, but something made him stop. Footsteps. Distant but coming closer. Someone else was in the corridor. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. He stepped into the shadows and waited. A figure appeared at the far end of the hall. Tall, dressed in black, moving with purpose. The person stopped exactly where Daniel had been standing moments before. They looked at the loose panel. Then they looked down the hall. Searching, Daniel held his breath. The figure pulled out a phone and spoke in a low voice. It's gone. Someone found it. A pause. I don't know who, but we need to find them. Tonight, Daniel's chest tightened. They knew. Somehow, they already knew. He waited until the figure left, then slipped down a side passage toward the guard quarters. His shift didn't end for another 4 hours, but he couldn't stay here. Not now. Not with that letter burning a hole in his jacket. He reached his locker, grabbed his bag, and made for the exit. But as he pushed through the heavy door into the night air, a voice called out behind him. Right. Stop. He froze. It was Captain Hollis, head of palace security. A man Daniel had trusted for years. But now, in the dim light of the courtyard, Hollis's face looked different. Harder. Colder. We need to talk, Hollis said quietly. About what you found? Daniel's throat felt tight. Captain Hollis stood in the doorway, blocking the only exit. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp. Too sharp. I don't know what you mean, sir, Daniel said, trying to keep his voice steady. Hollis didn't move. Don't insult me, right? The cameras caught you in the East Wing, near the library. You were off your route. There were cameras everywhere in the castle. He knew that, but he hadn't thought about them in the moment. Stupid. Careless. I heard a noise, Daniel said. I went to check it out. That's all. Hollis took a step closer. And did you find anything? The letter felt like it was burning through his jacket. Daniel could feel the weight of it against his chest. If he lied and Hollis searched him, it was over. But if he told the truth, what then? No, sir, Daniel said. Just a loose panel. Probably rats. Hollis studied him for a long moment. The silence stretched between them like a razor's edge. Then, finally, Hollis nodded. Get home, right? You look exhausted. Daniel didn't wait. He walked past Hollis, forcing himself not to run. Every step felt too loud. Every breath too obvious. But he made it to his car without being stopped. He slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the palace gates. Only when he was a mile away did he allow himself to breathe. He drove to his flat in South London. It was small, quiet, the kind of place where no one asked questions. He locked the door behind him, drew the curtains, and sat down at his kitchen table. Then he pulled out the letter in the dim light of his kitchen lamp. The words seemed even more dangerous than before. Queen Elizabeth had written about a conspiracy. About people inside the palace who wanted control, who wanted to shape the monarchy from the shadows. She mentioned a meeting, a decision made without her knowledge, and she named 3 men. Lord Edmund Carrington, Senior Royal Advisor Sir Philip Ashford, Head of the Privy Council, and General Thomas Whitmore, Chief of Palace Operations. All 3 were still alive. All 3 still held power. Daniel felt sick. If this letter got out, it would destroy them. But if it didn't, what did that mean? That the Queen had hidden it for a reason? That she had been afraid? He read the last paragraph again. Whoever finds this must decide. Speak the truth and risk everything. Or bury it and let the shadows win. I cannot make that choice for you. But know this, the crown is not what it seems, and neither is loyalty. Daniel set the letter down. His hands were shaking. He thought about his mother. She had raised him alone after his father left, worked 2 jobs to put him through school. She had been so proud when he joined the Royal Guard. She called him her hero. What would she say if she knew what he was holding? A knock at the door made him jump. It was 2 a.m. No one should be here. Daniel grabbed the letter and shoved it into a drawer. Then he walked to the door and looked through the peephole. A woman stood outside, young, dark coat. He didn't recognize her. Who is it? Daniel called through the door. My name's Claire Hastings, the woman said. I'm a journalist, and I know what you found tonight. Daniel's heart stopped. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Yes, you do, Claire replied calmly. And if you don't let me in, you're going to be arrested by morning. Maybe worse. Daniel didn't move. His mind raced. How did she know? How could she possibly know? I'm not working against you, Claire continued. I'm trying to help. But we don't have much time, please. Against every instinct, Daniel unlocked the door. Claire stepped inside quickly and closed the door behind her. She looked around the flat, then at Daniel. You read it, didn't you? She asked. Daniel nodded slowly. Then you know why they want it back, Claire said. And you know what they'll do to get it. Asterisk Claire Hastings moved through the flat like she had been there before. She checked the windows, pulled the curtains tighter. Then she sat down at the kitchen table and looked at Daniel with the kind of intensity that made him uncomfortable. How do you know about the letter? Daniel asked. Because I've been investigating the palace for 3 years, Claire said. And because Queen Elizabeth wasn't the only one who knew what was happening? Daniel frowned. What are you talking about? Claire pulled a folder from her bag and set it on the table. Inside were photographs, documents, newspaper clippings, all of them marked with red ink. After Princess Diana died, there were rumors, Claire said. Whispers that the palace had been trying to control her, silence her. Some people thought it was just conspiracy nonsense, but a few of us kept digging. She slid a photograph across the table. It showed 3 men in suits standing outside Buckingham Palace. Daniel recognized them immediately. Carrington, Ashford, Whitmore, the same men named in the letter. These 3 have been operating behind the scenes for decades, Claire continued. They advise the monarchy, shape policy, control access. But they're not loyal to the crown. They're loyal to something else. To what? Daniel asked. Power? Claire said simply. The kind that doesn't need a throne. Daniel stared at the photograph. The men looked ordinary, respectable, like 1,000 other bureaucrats in London. But now, knowing what he knew, they looked different. Dangerous. Why would the Queen hide the letter? Daniel asked. Why not expose them? Because she couldn't, Claire said. Not without proof, and not without risking everything. The monarchy is fragile. If the public found out that people inside the palace were working against the Queen, it would destroy the institution. She couldn't let that happen. Daniel leaned back in his chair. His head was spinning. So what am I supposed to do? He asked. Claire met his eyes. You have two choices. You can give me the letter, and I'll publish the story. The truth will come out, but you'll be exposed. They'll come after you. Your life will never be the same. And the second choice, you destroy the letter, Claire said. Burn it. Pretend you never found it. Go back to your life. But you'll have to live with the fact that you let them win. Daniel looked at the drawer where he had hidden the letter. His stomach twisted. How do I know you're telling the truth? He asked. How do I know you're not just using me for a story? Claire didn't flinch. You don't. But ask yourself this. If I was lying, why would I be here at 2 in the morning? Why would I risk everything to warn you? Daniel didn't have an answer. Before he could say anything, his phone buzzed. A text message. From an unknown number. We know you have it. Return it by morning, and nothing happens. Refuse, and you'll regret it. Daniel's blood went cold. He showed the message to Claire. She read it and swore under her breath. They're moving faster than I thought. Who sent this? Daniel asked. Could be anyone, Claire said. Hollis, Carrington. Could be someone we don't even know about. But it doesn't matter. They're watching you now. Daniel stood up and paced the small kitchen. His mind was racing. If he gave the letter back, he'd be safe. But the Queen's secret would die with her. If he went public, he'd be destroyed. But the truth would finally come out. What would you do? Daniel asked quietly. Claire looked at him for a long moment. I'd do what the Queen couldn't. I'd fight. Daniel closed his eyes. He thought about his mother again. About the pride in her voice when she called him her hero. He thought about the Queen, about the risk she had taken by hiding the letter in the first place, and he made his decision. Okay, Daniel said. I'll do it. But we do this my way, Claire nodded. What's your way? We don't just publish the letter, Daniel said. We go deeper. We find proof. Real proof. And we make sure that when this story breaks, there's no way they can cover it up. Claire smiled. It was the first time she had smiled since she arrived. Now you're thinking like a journalist, she said. But before they could say anything else, the lights in the flat went out. The darkness was absolute. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Outside, the streetlights were still on. It was just his flat. Someone had cut the power. Don't move, Claire whispered. Daniel heard her shifting in the dark. A soft click. Then a beam of light from her phone illuminated the kitchen. Back door, Claire hissed. Now, they moved quickly through the flat. Daniel grabbed the letter from the drawer and stuffed it into his jacket. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. Whoever was outside wasn't here to talk. They reached the back door. Daniel unlocked it slowly, trying not to make a sound. The door opened onto a narrow alley behind the building, empty, dark. Go, Claire whispered. They slipped out into the alley and started moving. Daniel didn't know where they were going. He just knew they had to get away. Behind them, he heard the front door of his flat splinter open. Voices, low and urgent. At least 2 people, maybe more. This way, Claire said, pulling him toward the street. They emerged onto a main road. Cars passed by, their headlights cutting through the night. Claire flagged down a taxi. They climbed in, and she gave the driver an address in East London. Daniel looked back at his building. 2 figures stood in the alley, watching. He couldn't see their faces, but he could feel their eyes. The taxi pulled away, and Daniel finally let himself breathe. Who were they? He asked. Could be private security, Claire said. Could be police. Could be worse? Worse? Claire didn't answer. They rode in silence for 20 minutes. The taxi dropped them off in front of a run-down apartment building in Hackney. Claire paid the driver and led Daniel inside. The building smelled like mold and cigarettes. They climbed 3 flights of stairs and stopped at a door marked 3B. Claire knocked twice, paused, then knocked 3 more times. The door opened. A man stood in the doorway. Older, gray hair. Sharp eyes. He looked at Daniel, then at Claire. "This him?" the man asked. "This is him," Claire said. The man stepped aside. "Get in quick." They entered the flat. It was cluttered with papers, computers, and filing cabinets. The walls were covered with photographs and documents connected by red string. It looked like something out of a crime thriller. "Daniel, this is Marcus Cole," Claire said. "He used to work for MI5. Marcus closed the door and locked it. "Used to is the key phrase," he said. "I quit when I realized who I was really working for." There were photographs of the same 3 men from Claire's. Folder, Carrington, Ashford, Whitmore. But there were others too. Politicians, businessmen, faces Daniel didn't recognize. "What is all this?" Daniel asked. "Proof," Marcus said. 20 years of it. These men don't just control the palace. They control half of Westminster. Banks, media, intelligence services. They're everywhere." Daniel felt like the room was closing in on him. "Why hasn't anyone stopped them?" "Because they're too powerful," Marcus said. "And because anyone who tries ends up dead or disappeared." Daniel looked at Claire. "You didn't mention that part. Didn't want to scare you," Claire said. "Well, congratulations," Daniel said. "I'm terrified." Marcus poured 3 glasses of whiskey and handed them out. "You should be. But you're also the first person in 20 years who's found actual evidence written by the Queen herself. That changes everything." Daniel pulled the letter from his jacket and set it on the table. Marcus picked it up carefully, like it was made of glass. He read it slowly. When he finished, he looked at Daniel with something close to respect. "Do you understand what this means?" Marcus asked. "That I'm in serious trouble?" Daniel said. "That we finally have a chance," Marcus said. "The Queen didn't just write this letter. She left breadcrumbs, clues. If we follow them, we can expose the whole network." "What kind of clues?" Daniel asked. Marcus pointed to a line in the letter. "She mentions a meeting. September 15th, 1997, the day before she wrote this. If we can find out where that meeting happened and who was there, we can connect the dots." Claire leaned forward. "How do we do that?" "Palace records," Marcus said. "Security logs. But we can't just walk in and ask for them." Daniel felt a cold certainty settle over him. "I can." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You're still on the guard roster?" "Until tomorrow morning," Daniel said. "When I don't show up for my shift, they'll know something's wrong. But until then, I'm still one of them." Claire shook her head. "It's too dangerous. They're already looking for you." "Which is exactly why it has to be tonight," Daniel said, "before they lock me out completely." Marcus studied him. "You sure about this?" Daniel wasn't sure about anything anymore, but he thought about the Queen's letter, about the risk she had taken, about the choice she had left him. "I'm sure," Daniel said, the plan was simple. Too simple. But it was all they had. Daniel would return to Windsor Castle before dawn. He'd use his security clearance to access the archives in the lower levels, find the logs from September 1997, photograph everything, and get out. Simple, except for the part where he could be arrested. "Or worse, you'll have 20 minutes, Marcus said, handing Daniel a small camera. "Any longer, and they'll notice you're not at your post." "What if someone stops me?" Daniel asked. "Tell them you're doing a routine check," Marcus said. "Stay calm. Act normal. And whatever you do, don't run. Running makes you guilty." Claire handed him a burner phone. "Call me when you're out. If I don't hear from you in 30 minutes, I'm going to the press with what we have." Daniel nodded. His mouth was dry. His hands were steady, but only because he was forcing them to be. He left the flat at 4 in the morning. The streets were empty. He took the train to Windsor, watching every passenger, every shadow. No one followed him. At least no one he could see. By 5:30 he was back at the palace gates. The guard on duty recognized him. "Right? Thought you went home sick?" I did," Daniel said. "But I left something in my locker. Won't take long." The guard waved him through. Daniel's heart pounded as he walked across the courtyard. He kept his head down, nodded at the few staff members already awake. Everything felt too bright, too loud. He reached the east wing and descended the stairs to the archive levels. These rooms were old, dusty, barely used. The kind of place where secrets went to die. Daniel found the file room marked 1997. The door was locked, but his security card still worked. The door clicked open. Asterisk. Inside. The room was lined with shelves, boxes, files, decades of palace records. Daniel pulled out his camera and started searching. September. There he found the box marked September 1997 and opened it. Inside were logs, security schedules, visitor records. He started photographing everything, page after page. Then he found it September 15th. A private meeting in the Queen's study. No official record, no names listed. But there was a handwritten note clipped to the log. Attendees ECPA-TW, closed session. No staff present. ECPA-TW, Carrington, Ashford, Whitmore. Asterisk. Daniel's hands trembled as he photographed the note. This was it. Proof that the meeting happened. Proof that the Queen had been right. But as he lowered the camera, he heard footsteps. Someone was coming down the stairs. Daniel shoved the files back into the box and moved toward the door. But before he could reach it, the door opened. Captain Hollis stood in the doorway. "Hello." "Right," Hollis said quietly. "I was hoping I wouldn't find you here." Daniel's mind raced. He could run. He could fight. But both options ended badly. "I can explain," Daniel said. "I'm sure you can," Hollis said, "but it won't matter." Hollis stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. In his hand was a gun. Daniel's breath caught. "Sir, please. I liked you, right?" Hollis said. "You were a good guard. Loyal. Quiet. But you found something you shouldn't have. And now I have to clean up the mess."
Ow.
Daniel's back was against the shelves. There was nowhere to go. "You're one of them," Daniel said. "You've been working for them this whole time." Hollis didn't deny it. "I've been protecting the crown, just not the way you think." "By covering up the truth?" Daniel said. "By doing exactly what the Queen was afraid of?" "The Queen was old," Hollis said. "She didn't understand how the world works, but we do. And we've kept this country stable for decades. That's worth more than one letter." Daniel felt the camera in his pocket. The evidence. If he died here, it died with him. "You're going to kill me," Daniel said. Hollis raised the gun. "I'm going to do what's necessary." But before Hollis could pull the trigger, the lights went out. Asterisk. The darkness swallowed the room. Daniel didn't think. He dove to the side as the gunshot cracked through the air. The bullet hit the shelves behind him, sending splinters of wood flying. Daniel scrambled across the floor. His hands found a metal box. He grabbed it and hurled it toward where Hollis had been standing. He heard a grunt. A curse. Then the lights came back on. Hollis was on the ground, clutching his shoulder. The gun had skidded across the floor. And standing in the doorway was Claire Hastings. "Told you I wouldn't wait 30 minutes, Claire said. She moved quickly, kicking the gun away from Hollis. Behind her, Marcus Cole appeared, holding a tablet. "Got it all on camera," Marcus said, pointing to a small device mounted above the door. "Every word, every threat, it's already uploading." Hollis looked up at them, his face pale. "You don't know what you've done." "We know exactly what we've done," Claire said. "We've ended this." Daniel stood up slowly. His legs felt weak. His heart was still racing. But he was alive. "Call the police," Claire said to Marcus. "Already did," Marcus replied. "They'll be here in 5 minutes." Hollis laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. You think the police will help you? You think anyone will? This goes deeper than you can imagine. Maybe, Daniel said, but now everyone will know. He pulled the camera from his pocket and held it up. I have the logs. The proof, and you just confessed on video. It's over. Hollis closed his eyes. The next hour was chaos. Police arrived. Questions were asked. Daniel told them everything, showed them the letter, the photographs, the recording. At first, they didn't believe him, but Marcus had connections. And Claire had already sent the story to 3 major newspapers. By sunrise, the palace was swarming with investigators. By noon, the story had broken. The headlines were everywhere. Royal conspiracy exposed. Queen's secret letter reveals palace betrayal. 3 high-ranking officials arrested. Carrington, Ashford, Whitmore, all 3 were taken into custody. Hollis, too. The investigation expanded. More names, more arrests. The network Marcus had been tracking for 20 years finally collapsed. Daniel sat in a quiet room at a police station, drinking terrible coffee. Claire sat across from him, looking exhausted but satisfied. You did it, she said. We did it, Daniel corrected. Claire smiled. The Queen would be proud. Daniel thought about that. About the letter. About the choice she had left him. He still didn't know if he had made the right decision. His life would never be the same. He'd lost his job, his anonymity, his safety, but the truth was out, and maybe that was enough. 3 months later, Daniel stood outside Buckingham Palace. The investigation was still ongoing, but the changes were already visible. New leadership, new transparency. The palace was different now. Better, some said. Daniel didn't know if that was true, but he knew one thing. The shadows had lost. He turned and walked away from the palace. The city stretched out before him, full of noise and life. He had no job, no plan. But he had something more important. He had his integrity. And for the first time in months, Daniel Wright smiled. The story didn't end there, of course. There were trials, testimonies. Daniel became a public figure, whether he wanted to or not. But he faced it all with the same quiet. Courage that had led him to open that letter in the first place, because some secrets are too important to stay buried, and some choices define who we really are. The Queen had known that. And now, so did Daniel. As he walked through the streets of London, he felt the weight lift from his shoulders. The letter was gone. The truth was free. And the shadows that had haunted the palace for decades were finally exposed to the light. It was over, and it was just beginning.